talk about, just real briefly, the 4Cs. Has everyone heard of the 4Cs of underwriting? It's what we base our credit risk on, essentially. We'll increase our knowledge of how to calculate that income, we'll review some document requirements, and we'll analyze stability, like I said, and see how we can make this work when we look at these pay stubs and such. So credit, the 4Cs, credit, capacity, capital, and collateral. We're of course going to be dealing with capacity, the borrower's ability to repay. It's not just something that the agencies talk about, having QM loans, ability to repay and all that, ATR. We're actually looking just to see how can we qualify them, keep their debt ratio in line. Can we stretch income at times? I know there's questions when there's variable income types, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Credit, of course, we all look at credit. Do they pay their bills already? Gives us an idea if they're gonna continue to pay their bills with us. Capital, people say how much skin do they have in a game? The more money that someone will invest into their opportunity to purchase a home, usually the more they're willing to continue to pay us on time and keep the mortgage right. Makes sense, right? If I put in 20%, I'm probably gonna pay more than if I put in 2 or 3%. So that's the idea behind that. And then collateral, of course, is just the appraisal. It's what we're lending on, so that's analyzed, whether it's your own department or somewhere else, but we take that into consideration. So, the 4Cs. So capacity. This slide's pretty good as far as, what are we looking at when we're looking at someone's income? I was just saying, are they gonna be able to pay us back, right? Various income sources we're gonna touch on. There's so many different types of income, which is why a lot of the guidelines get jumbled up. And you may have that one underwriter maybe a little more strict and one's willing to take a little, stretch it a little further. But when you put on the underwriter hat, you're also gotta remember that they're actually thinking about the credit risk of the file. Whereas an originator may have that in the back of their head, but what's our main thing? Closing the file, right? So we wanna close loans, that's what our objective is, write and close loans, but we also have other people that are monitoring everything we do. We wanna look at some documents and what's required to verify income, just the basic elements based on pay stubs or whatever you might be using to qualify. And then again, we'll calculate some income as well. Income. When you're looking at income, you definitely have to have a history. You have to make sure it's stable and reliable and that it's probable to continue in the future. Because really that's all we're dealing with is probability, right? That it will continue. Unless of course you have that certain type of income that has a defined expiration date. And what would I be talking about there? Anybody?
Alimony.
Alimony? Anything else?
Contract work.
Contract work, definitely, expiration date there. Maybe if you have child support coming in. All right, so with that, when we look at pay stubs, just the general W-2 pay stub is probable to continue with a defined expiration date. We definitely need to look for that 3-year continuance. It's up here, but I will say it since I don't know about this recording, but the consistency. We do a 2-year look back on our 1003s, and it's important to do that. Even if I've only been working, say for a year, you actually want to ask them, well, when did you last work? That way you can make a story there, because what if I took off 5 years to raise a family, but I joined back into the workforce doing the same type of work? Pretty good, right? That's actually a compensating factor towards my whole story. I'm actually in the same line of work, maybe making the same amount of money. So you should ask those questions. You also find that kids come out of high school or whatever they may be doing. So make sure that it may not be the last 2 years, just make sure you're putting that on your 1003. Current work, if it's less than 2 years, where did you work before and what was it? DCAs, you've heard of the ABCs, but we do it backwards here. And we skip a letter too. So when we look at capacity as far as analyzing the income, make sure you're getting the documentation, you're calculating it, and then analyze it. You want to review the last 2 years. What are we trying to do? Make sure it's stable and reliable. Okay, so after the calculation, take a look back to the prior year when you have those documents. I know sometimes our findings only give us one year to look for, but make sure that your year-to-date is consistent with what's happening with your current income and then even last year. Are they actually making that same amount of money? Is it probable that it'll continue? Of course, as is ice cream, income will come in different flavors, all different types of income that we're going to look at. And again, we can only look at a few today, and this is the basic one. I will say though, someone did talk about maybe the self-employed class. We do have a really good one, so if you're looking to analyze your self-employed borrowers, that might be an option for us to get together again, or we also have things online. So the income types themselves, we know that we're gonna have primary income, sometimes secondary, and then we're gonna have that additional income. So primary, of course, their main source of income, what they're relying on, even their everyday job. Sometimes people have that secondary income, a second job that they're doing, maybe even they're in the reserve, something that's secondary over and above their primary. And additional is what we're talking about, typically alimony, child support, and things of that nature. Okay? Easy enough, right? Looks like we got this. We have our two types of income. What is the source? Well, you have varying types, but is the source, is it a fixed type of income, something that you know what they're getting month after month, week after week, or is it actually going to fluctuate? Is it some type of variable income? Each of these come with their own set of guidelines, don't they? What do you need really when you look at the fixed type of income? Pay stub W-2 for the most part. That's a majority of our borrowers, right? If you're looking at maybe long-term disability or alimony, child support, what are you looking for there?
Divorce decree, judgment.
Divorce decree, would you say judgment?
Yeah.
Say that? For judgment, for the child support,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even the alimony. With disability, what are you looking for there?
Award letter.
Their award letter, something from that company giving them that, the claimant for the insurance, something from them that they are actually going to get that disability. Social Security, what do you use there?
Award
The award letter. Some people use the bank statements, right? Are you guys allowed to do that, or do you even think about going there?
Our underwriters usually want.
And what is the benefit of using the award letter over using the deposit in the bank statements?
The gross amount.
Right, you want the highest amount. And if they're having any Medicare or any insurance or anything taken out of there, even taxes, you're getting that net if you use the bank statement. So absolutely, get that 1099 or the award letter. Variable income, what's the rule behind variable income? How many years do you need? 2 years. In the guidelines though, what do they say? 2 years is required, unless, right? What else is acceptable? Any lesser length of time?
18 months with probability.
18 months compensating factor. Yeah, you can actually go 82 months. You can actually go 12 months with a compensating factor when you're looking at the variable types of income, okay? So keep that tucked behind your ear as you're looking at those.
But with 1 year, don't you have to have like 5 years of being self-employed?
Yes.
Well, if you're self-employed,
Yeah.
it's different. Self-employed income is a little different, but if you are self-employed and it's less than a year, depending on what type of income you're getting as your self-employed income, like what are we talking? I give myself a pay stub and then I make a little commission on top of it, you should have a year behind you at least. Sometimes though, if I'm an attorney, or you're opening up a self-employed business where you've already been in that type of business already, and now you're changing over. Like one time I was a loan officer, and they paid us a salary and commission. And then they decided or a salary, I'm sorry. Then they said, you know what, forget those salaries, we're gonna give you a little bit of money down here and everything else is gonna be commission. But I've already been doing it X amount of years, so if I was going to apply, I may be able to make a case after I garnered some commission, maybe 6 months to a year behind me, where I've already been in that business for X amount of time, and now it looks like I'm making that same amount of money, because actually, sometimes it evens out. So you just have to have that history behind it.
May I interrupt just for a second?
Yes, please.
We have a loan upstairs right now where the borrower is an escrow officer, and at one company, she got a monthly bonus because they get paid like us. They get their base salary plus on bonus for every deal that comes in from referral partners and past clients and things of that nature. She made a change October of 2018 to a new company, and they are classifying the bonus as a commission now. And we can still do it upstairs because it's been 12 months, and we made the case between the bonus and the commission being the same thing. So so Dave, you're 12 months for self-employed, you're thinking LP and all that other good stuff, but in this particular case, you can go down to 12 months, even upstairs with some of the toughest underwriter up there who I had a battle. So anyway,
But if you already know that rule and you have it tucked behind your ear that you can go 12 months and you have that compensating factor of doing that same work before, at least you know the arguments to be made and give it a shot. Okay, so is the income likely to continue? Likely to continue, of course, you're gonna have your base salary, commission, with that history, but usually if you're on a salary commission, it's going to continue. Foster care income, corporate pension, social security, retirement income, you know how much you're getting and it's going to continue, it's fixed. When you look at that defined expiration date, it could be the child support, as you said, alimony, IRA distributions, it could run out. Social security for the benefit of, what does that mean? You all know?
They get money for someone
minor.
else.
Right. If I'm married, my spouse passes, but I have young children, I may be getting social security benefits, death benefits on their behalf, but those also have a defined expiration date, we have to prove the age of the child. Trust income could also have a defined expiration date as well as notes receivable. When that happens, just make sure that likely to continue, again, probability, defined expiration date, how long do we need it to continue? How many years?
3.
3 years. Great. All right, common types of income documentation. This slide is here, but I'm gonna pass it because they actually wrote it all on the next one, okay? So income documentation, you're looking at your pay stubs, W-2s as you told me. Of course, a written VOE. What's the great thing about a written VOE? If someone's worked at the same place for at least 2 years.
Breaks it all down?
It'll break it down for you, but do you still need W-2s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the W-2 wages should actually be on your VOE. If you worked at the same place over 2 years, that eliminates the need for the W-2 because it's all right there.
It does.
We still
That's
do.
good to know.
Now, what does DD say?
Our underwriters
It
don't
doesn't
get that.
DD say-
Never
I
had.
Well, it's a
think
lateral
DD says it's W-2 or VOE.
It does.
Or, so look for the word or. It may
Yeah.
help you, there's
Yeah.
just sometimes, usually we're getting it anyway, and then maybe we're
Yeah.
ordering a VOE to see the breakdown for
Yeah.
whatever the one reason.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can't get those documents, so they are lateral, okay? You have personal tax returns. Usually, if you're looking at personal tax returns, it's because they have some type of self-employment around it. We have our third-party verification providers. Of course, The Work Number is the most famous, although there are a couple other ones that are out there now that are doing third-party verifications. And then handwritten documentation. Will you guys accept handwritten documentation? Or does it depend? I mean,
Depends on who it's from.
No.
Written VOEs,
On
but.
it. VOE.
what about a pay stub and a W-2?
No.
No.
One agency says, no way. Fannie wants you to have typed out, computer-generated documents. But Freddie, on the other hand, would allow handwritten documents. Maybe it's a smaller company, you can do pay stubs and W-2s. The only thing is you have to verify that the W-2 has been filed with the IRS. So, get some transcripts or something. But if you are working with some small company and that's the way they do business, sometimes that happens. At least if you have a way to send it to one agency over the other, you still have a loan that you can maybe.
You guys
work
might
with.
not ever run into this, but Caliber, if you have handwritten tax returns, will require the transcripts before docs to prove that they actually filed those tax returns. So I don't know what we do in-house on handwritten tax returns.
They're
It's been
rare
forever.
these days, it
Yeah.
seems like it's rare, but it's still fun facts, you gotta throw them in. All right. I think we just went backwards. No, we did not. Okay, the income types for today's session are, again, basic income. We'll look at base salary calculation, we'll look at commission, bonus, hourly, and overtime. There are additional courses that you could take online that dive a little deeper into some of these other areas, but with just the amount of time we have, this is the basics, okay? So calculating monthly income. If you ever forget, this is on our website, you can always take a picture of this or something, but when you're doing hourly, you're just gonna take the hours they work per week, times that hourly rate, times 52 weeks in the year, and then divide it by 12. Because when we do our calculations, we deal in months, right? Everything is about how much you make a month, everything is on the monthly. Bi-weekly, that means they're paid every other week. That means you get paid 3 times, twice a year. Good stuff, right? But you take your base pay times 26 weeks, divide by 12. I know this is so simple. And then bi-monthly, they're twice a month. Base pay is 24 weeks, divide by 12. Can you always tell if something's bi-monthly or bi-weekly?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Always? Just with one pay stub and a W-2?
No.
Not with one pay stub.
Sometimes you may have to ask for more, right? So sometimes your findings will say just a pay stub. Sometimes you need two, maybe even three, to just make sure you're calculating right. And the big thing about calculating right is it could kill a loan. And I'll give you an idea. If it's $1,800 per pay period, and you're guessing, I'm sure this is gonna be semi-monthly, every other week. So if we take that 26 pay periods and divide it by 12, we end up with $3,900 a month. But what if it's actually determined that they're semi-monthly, and we do the calculation at 24, we end up at $3,600. That's a $300 difference. That could actually kill your loan. It could make it better if you did it backwards. But this $300 a month could actually kill a loan. So it's really important that you do this upfront and make sure that it's right. Even if it means asking for an additional pay stub or getting more information so you can see how that flows. So let's look at an example here. Of course, when you're looking to calculate your income, you want to look at the 1003. You need a little background on it because you want to make sure that the pay stub matches as well. So in this case, we're going to do Elizabeth Simon, all the pertinent information, birthday, years of school, whatnot. She's married, she has dependents, 1, age 8. Her present address is on Oakwood Lane in Pleasant Valley. And she's been there 4 years. She's working at Web Vision on Forest in Pleasant Valley, and then 10 years and 12 years in the profession. Also gives us her title. As you all know this, I know. One of the things to look at as we go to the pay stub is looking, okay, she tells us the address of her company and where she works are in the same area. And you might not, out of how many states you do, you might not know all the areas, but if somebody is actually saying, if she's saying I live and work in Pleasant Valley, that makes sense. But what if she works in Vancouver, or she says the address is in Vancouver, Washington? That could be a red flag that this lady actually is work at home, which then requires more documents, right? So it looks to see where the office is, their physical office that she's working, and then bounce it off your pay stub and see if it all adds up. Now, sometimes we do have places, like I worked at USAA, the pay stubs came out of San Antonio, but I was in Tampa. You know, that happens. That can easily be explained. But sometimes it does trigger you to find other things out about your borrower.
Why does it matter if they work at home?
Well, more docs. Like if they're buying a house and they're moving, is that work at home gonna be then compromised by moving somewhere else? Is it okay with that company that they're actually relocating? There's things that could come up. All right, pay stub review. Of course, we wanna make sure that the name of the company is on there. And again, bouncing that off your 1003, making sure everything's matching up properly. Looking at her name, address. Sometimes too, we've had underwriter's condition, I'm sure you have too, where this address maybe is the old address. They didn't update this address. Oh yeah, that's the old house I lived in. Now I live in this other one. Okay, well, we need to address that because the addresses should match where they say they live, right? Shouldn't they? Or no? It should. 99% of the time it does, but if you see that it doesn't, it is a red flag for your underwriter. Social security numbers may or may not be redacted or on your paper, but you're also gonna see the status, a lot of times is on there as far as married. Sometimes this might be another indicator that they've told you something else different on your 1003, so it's worth a look-see. And then for the check date, the check date is what? The date the check was cut, okay, the date it was issued. Period ending, that's their pay-through date, right? Which date do you look at when you're doing your calculations? Which one?
Period ending.
Period ending date, definitely. In this case, we have 6/14. So if I was gonna do a calculation on this pay stub overall, what math am I going to use for my dividing number?
5.5
Ish,
months.
5.5 months.
Yeah.
It's a little shy. You're a little
Bi-weekly.
to the good. So if you would take what number though? Take the 14, divide it into what? How many days are in June? 30, so 14 divided by 30, I believe it's 0.47, very close, so I'm a little off. But you have to be a couple tenths off, could change things up, so you wanna make sure you're as accurate as possible. So take your pay period ending date, divide it into months, so you have 5 months, it'll be 5.47. Why? Because you haven't actually reached the end of that 6 month yet. That sometimes throws people. Y'all know a little trick on how to figure out how many days are in the month?
Yep,
with the fist?
yep.
Tell us.
So you do the knuckles, you probably know it.
I don't know this one, I know another one.
Even though you were a
Teach
teacher.
us.
Like you look at the
So
calendar.
all the knuckles are 31 days, so you have January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December.
Yep.
So all the knuckles have 31 days.
All the knuckles are
And the
31, your
in-between's done.
dips are gonna be 30.
Or 28.
Or 28, February falls in the dip.
July's 31, August is 31.
Oh, you just know it?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
also a
I just know
song.
the
Yeah.
Oh, I
months.
only-
30 days has September, April,
Yeah,
June,
you
and
teach
November,
us.
all the rest have 31 or.
After
28.
February's done, all the rest have 30.
Yeah, I just do 30 days, usually February, June, November.
Yeah. I think so. Wait.
All right, so if you learn nothing else, you know the knuckle count now.
Some people's brains are
I just go 5.5.
Go to your phone, look at the calendar.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm just trying, you know, to give you the,
Yeah.
fine tune.
Yeah.
All right, so from there, you can also, most of the time, pay frequency is not listed out. We have to then try to determine, oh, it's the 14th, what is the pay issued? Is that a Saturday? Wait a minute, it was only paid through Friday, what's happening? So the calendar really is optimal. But in this case, we see that it's bi-weekly. And then you wanna go jump down to the hours and earnings. In this case, we just have regular, it gives us hours of 75, and then a base earnings of 2307.70. Hours and units are fine, that's an accumulative number, and the earnings are here at 27,892.40. So with that number, how would you calculate this income? Just with that.
That number divided by 5.47 and then multiplied by 26.
Okay, what number? This?
Yeah, I don't know what the flex dollars are though.
Okay, so just, if you don't know what the flex dollars are, you don't have a history, and maybe you don't need it to qualify, you don't have to ask. But in her line of work, maybe like a nurse sometimes has those flex hours, if you have police officers and different ones, if it's in that line of work and they're always getting it, it's okay to use it. The agencies have no problem with using those kind of things. But in this case, if this is a flex dollar, you don't know what it is, it could be something with insurance, who knows what it is, right? If I'm not gonna ask and I'm not gonna get a full VOE, I'm not going to include it. But you need a history to be able to use it. So anyways, this regular earnings of 2307.70, you're right, you would take that number, multiply it out, because we have a bi-weekly, times 26 and divided by 12. For the year-to-date, a couple things I've seen people do. You have a year-to-date earnings right on the same line, right here. Some people like to jump down here to the year-to-date on the gross pay stub, right? Gross year-to-date. But that's going to be inclusive of other incomes such as flex dollars. Who knows? Sometimes there's other things listed here. So you don't want to just jump down here, because this could be income that you cannot include. Make sure you're staying on that same line item and using the year-to-date income as it relates to the current earnings. Does that make sense? Okay. This happens a lot of times. People just shoot straight down there and start dividing, and then, oh, it's over. You've missed out. Then you're right that you would take this year-to-date and divide it by the 5.47, as it's going to turn out to be if I'm going off memory. Okay. Another thing you want to look at, if you look at the tax and deductions, you're really just looking at these to make sure they're being taken out. If it's round numbers, a lot of times that could indicate maybe fraud. I'm not saying that it will every time, but if there's no change within there and it's just all even numbers, might be a problem. One of the things I do like to point out though is this after taxes, it doesn't highlight, but the after tax items, in this case we have a 401k loan and then an after tax long-term disability. That's what LTD is. Number one, if you have acronyms or little shortcuts in here that you don't understand, just Google it. You can find it 99% of the time. If they work at the post office, they have a lot of them. All you have to do is say, I'm gonna use the same one, but LTD at Portland Post Office. It's actually gonna pop you up a Portland Post Office kind of a information pertinent to that job, and it'll tell you what their acronyms are. So just Google it, you're mostly gonna find what you need there, and then you'll know what's going on. But on 401k loan, do we have to hit the borrower with that 401k loan in their ratios as a liability? Conventional. You do not. You do not need to put it in there. FHA, VA doesn't either. So I don't know about FHA, but VA would be no. But FHA aside, because I don't know. This does not need to be counted against your borrower, but why would you want to know that there's a 401k on this file? where might this information help you as you're analyzing your file?
Reserves.
Assets?
For the asset piece, how many loans can you take out on a 401k? One, sometimes two?
Depends on.
If I already have a loan on it, and I'm using that asset to qualify, I have to A, make sure that loan's been deducted, and I have to also make sure that I have access to those funds to use in the future. If I'm only allowed one loan on it, and the loan's already there, those assets are not even able for me to, accessible, thank you for the word. They're not accessible for me to use in my loan transaction. So this is just something to keep in mind. If you can have two loans, maybe sometimes people are taking out that second loan to use it as a down payment or something like that. But then if you're using those vested assets to qualify, you're gonna have to take out the amounts of the loan out of that balance and then just use what's left over. Yes, sir?
So going back, are you recommending that we use the 2307 or the year-to-date earnings?
Well, we're gonna, actually, you should calculate them both.
Okay, because one's 5,000, the other's 1562.
Yes, yes. Thank you. But yes, you should calculate them both.
But I'm just curious how our underwriters are gonna look at it.
They should be calculated both ways too. If I know underwriters, some places do it differently. But anyway, and I'll tell you why here in just a sec. So anyway, you're looking at that after-tax dollars for any deduction. Sometimes you'll find alimony or something that they're paying in here as well, a judgment. Maybe they have some type of lien against them. It's something that's coming out of their pay that you will have to include in liabilities. So make sure you pop eyes down in that area. And of course, over here, the pre-tax items are things that they're paying pre-tax, such as any 401k contributions or insurance. All right, so this is the worksheet that I have for you. And as we calculate income, we'll follow this format where we'll be looking at the monthly income, we'll calculate out, and then we're gonna do the year-to-date, and then we wanna compare it. And then for the history and making sure it's stable, you look at the prior year W-2, and then sometimes if you have 2 years W-2s, you calculate that out as well. Not necessarily using the W-2 income from the prior years to qualify, but you're looking for that stability of income. So back to this pay stub. This is Elizabeth's. We'll do that calculation now. So I want you guys to go ahead and do the calculation. We want to use the earnings, the 2307.70 if you can't see it. The base earnings are 2307.70, and then the year to date is 27,692.40. And I do have one regular calculator if anyone wants it. Jeopardy music cue. Remember your period ending? How did you calculate that so you know what you're dividing by?
Are we assuming they only work 75 hours, or is it they have took 5 off?
Okay, good question. Are we worried about how many hours they work? They actually have base earnings of 2307.30, so the amount of hours is not relevant in this case. I meant the amount of hours would be relevant if we're
Because
doing
the salary.
hourly wage. Yes, great question. And when you have your answers, please put your pencils down, heads down. No.
I just got triggered.
Right. I left out the mouths closed. Okay, are you ready to take a look at what we have, everyone? Don't want to take too long. So we're doing that 2308 times 26 because it was bi-weekly. When I say this, sometimes I trip up the semi-monthly bi-weekly, so I apologize in advance. So it's times 26, we ended up with 5,001 after we divided by 12. The year to date, we took the 27,692, you can drop the change, okay? Or round up as need might be. And then we divided that by 5.47, just to be a little more accurate than the 5.5, and then we have 5063. Now, just based on this, we want to look at the prior year's W-2. It seems stable as it is, but we want to go ahead and do that one look back at the W-2. Here's a W-2 for her, and it might be hard for you to see unless it's just my angle, But remember, what's in box 1 is what we pay taxes on. What's in box 5 is what we use to qualify, because it's really all the monies that they made. The difference between the two boxes is generally found down here in 12 for those pre-tax dollars that they put aside. Okay, so using box 5 to qualify, and that number, can everyone see it, or do you need me to say it?
We can see it.
Y'all can see it? Can you?
No.
It's 57,400. And then I'm gonna throw in the 2017 for you as well, which is 55,260 cents.
I don't understand why their year-to-date income is more if we're for sure confident about that salary.
The difference is, it could be that something rolled over from last year, maybe they got a little bonus on a different check for 15, 20 bucks.
And there's
Something
no
that we may not be seeing that's included, or
Oh,
maybe,
isn't it
maybe
on
they
there?
got an increase in pay by 50 cents.
Should it be on somewhere under year-to-date though?
Well,
Oh, was that one
not
thing?
necessarily, cause it's just on that pay line, so maybe
Probably
just on that.
thing right underneath the line though.
It could be, no, that is
That
gonna be
wasn't it?
included in the bottom year-to-date. Right. So up here, it's just the salary only. So they may, if it's a little
Oh,
more,
right.
it may
Yeah,
be,
but why is it
but
not?
this year-to-date is inclusive of anything that might be listed here.
I just don't understand why it's more.
Well, sometimes it happens, I mean, did they take a
Year-to-date.
day off that
Is
they didn't get paid for?
It doesn't.
Well, it's just a few bucks off, 50 bucks, so maybe there was something that, did they get an extra, like I said, was there a raise somewhere along the line that now the year-to-date's a little higher? Was it something that,
Oh, yeah, probably that.
you know, I mean, more than likely because it's a salary situation, and then remember that bottom year-to-date was inclusive of all the other weird stuff. So the bonus idea was not a good example. All right, so if we have 5,001 for our monthly, year-to-date ends up being 5,063. Our most recent W-2 was 4,783, and then prior was 4,600. Now, if you look at the history of this, as far as it being stable, is it stable that we went from 4,600 to 4,700? Reasonable, right, as far as a yearly increase or something like that. When we look up here and it's 5,063, also, is that reasonable based on the history of what they're making? And then if you, now that we're analyzing our income, right, just trying to see what's happening over the last couple of years. Now, if I'm looking at these two numbers, which one are you going to use as a qualifier? Which one do you think your underwriter will pick?
The lower one.
The lower, because right now, you're gonna use exactly what they're making now, times 26 divided by 12, which is gonna be the 5,001. Okay? All right, easy enough, but just a quick reminder on how to do that income for your basic, your borrower, who is that basic income
What's
of a
funny?
set pay.
He couldn't get through the door.
Okay, let's look at Peter next.
He's the best you got.
He got locked in.
Kurt's like, that's my star, and then he goes to leave.
I should have looked back.
Sam, if you could have got that on
That's classic.
If anyone leaves, make sure you
Will
follow
do,
this in case.
will do. I'll pan over.
Alright, so Peter, we're gonna do another one. We, of course, looking at the 1003, let's see where he works and what's going on with him. Peter Simon, married, one dependent. He's living on Oakwood Lane in Pleasant Valley. We have a 4-year look back. Franklin Elementary School, he is a teacher. What does that automatically tell us? He has a good heart.
Could be
Kurt, this
9
is
months
going
or
on the
12
coop, you
months.
know that, right?
Yes, and automatic, it tells us how, well,
We have to
forces us to
check
question,
if it's
9
12
months,
months or 9
how
months.
often is he being paid? Sometimes they even get paid 10. So it could be that's a variable situation based on how long they're getting paid, and then you have to calculate the math out from there. He says he's been on the job 5 years, 5 years in the profession. This pay stub looks like this. Is this a valid pay stub based on the common elements that must be on every pay stub? I don't know if it'll highlight, but it doesn't. We have the name and address of the company, we have the name of our borrower, social security numbers redacted, and we have our pay period ending date. Looks good, right? Okay, one of the things, our pay period ending date, if you can't see it, is 6/15/19.
I saw that deposit date's different.
Deposit date, 6/14/19. As it turns out, the 15th was a Saturday, the deposit date was a Friday. Not that we have our calendars, but that's the story. So does that tend to lead you down any path as to the frequency of pay?
Bi-monthly?
By month.
It would have to be, right? Because we have to do an example of each. But if you actually had just this pay stub, would you actually know for sure?
Probably from the year-to-date amount and divided
Yeah.
by 5.5.
You could
And
try to
knowing
back
teacher
into it, that's what they
salaries.
call backing into it, start at the
Typically,
end of the
teachers
day.
are paid once a month, so that's the other thing, that,
Oh, yeah, it could be monthly.
It could-
Semi-monthly.
But then year-to-date would be way off.
Yeah, this is gonna be a semi-monthly.
Oh, right.
But like you said, not knowing how often they're actually paid, how many months of the year, you're gonna have to get that full VOE and find out. All right, so on this pay stub, I want you guys to go ahead and calculate the income. We have a regular salary of $1854.16, and our year-to-date is $20,395.76.
Yeah.
Every now and then, a teacher's pay stub, over here where they have the deductions for insurance, I have a number after it. That would indicate the number of months they're paid as well. Every now and then, it might say like dental, and it might say 9. And vision 9, that's an indicator. I don't see that very often, but it could happen and give you a tip off. All right, let's see what we have. So by taking the monthly income times 24, divide by 12, we end up with 3708, and the year-to-date is gonna be exactly the same, 3708. Now we're just gonna look for the stability here, as far as dividing the W-2 wages. I won't force you to do this, but the numbers are 42,876.99 for 2018. 42,876.99, and then 39,304 cents for the prior year. When we divide our W-2 wages out, we have 32.75, 35.73, and now we're at 37.08. What number are we going to use to qualify? Does this seem like he's making stable income, reliable, like this is something that he could support paying back our loan? Yes. So this is another one of the easy ones, and it looks good. The hardest part here is doing a calculation. So if you find out that this guy, when you get the full VOE back, the one thing to remember is you'll have a salary and it'll tell you they're paid 9 months. You'll take the salary times 9 months and then divide that by 12. Sometimes people take the salary and multiply by 12, they don't do it exactly right. So remember, how much they're getting paid by the number of months they're actually getting paid, and then divide that by 12 in the big picture when you get the full VOE. We probably should throw an example of one of those in here that throw people off. But we're not here to trick you.
And we need to go by the 6/15 date as well, on the original pay stub, as opposed to the 14th.
Right, the 14th was the date that was deposited, the 15th was the pay-through date, so yes, sir. Thank you. All right, secondary income. This is also Peter, he has a second job. Remember, we have primary, now that's his music teacher, he also now has a secondary income. He's working at Learning Centers of America, also in Pleasant Valley, so this matches up to where he lives, no red flags there. Looking at the social, But if we look across the top, the check date is 6/21, period ending is 6/21. How often is he paid? Weekly. Does it give us an amount? $15.50. How many hours a week?
8.
Would you guys calculate this out? You have a lot of information. So which way are you gonna calculate this?
Has he been working this job for 2 years?
Yes.
And how
It's
long?
4 years, I believe.
How often does he do this? Is that yearly?
Let's say
Is he doing 8 hours for the full
I
year?
forget.
It took 2 years of this history.
Let's just say it's 2 years, calculate it out.
I know I think for sure.
Okay, so he's working all year doing this, 8 hours a week. Got it.
537.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Isn't it 1550 times 8 times 52?
Is that how the year-to-date works out to?
70 working every week. But
I
then
know.
I gotta check it different dates if that makes sense.
Yeah. Calculating year to date, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, 3,100.
So if I do it the other way, I get 539 versus 537, so year to date matches.
Okay, yeah, I got 537.
Okay, wait.
Remember when we did our first thing showing you the hourly wage? Hourly rate times number of hours a week times 52 weeks divided by 12, right?
Right, I'm just looking at,
It's the overall.
right. I mean, do we just use that and not compare the year-to-date?
Or you should always calculate out both. Because there are times when the year-to-date's gonna be a lot lesser than what you might see current on the current. Because maybe they took time off, maybe they had to take care of someone, they had a hip replaced, you know, something happened. Maybe they took some time off and didn't have PTO and didn't get paid a week or two. So it is important to calculate them both out. Okay, let's take a peek. If you take the monthly income, it was 124 times 52. Now, I led you down the path to do the rate times 8, but remember the the base is right here too, the 124. It was out there for you. So the 124 times 52 divided by 12 is 537. Then the year to date at 3,100 divided by 5.7 months. Remember, pay period ending was 6/21. We divide 21 into 30. It's 5 point something, right? In this case, it ended up being 5.7. And then that was my dividing number, and I had come up with 544. Any questions on that? I didn't tell you about the dividing number there. Okay, so then we just want to do the look back. Right now it's stable, it's reliable, it looks good, it's all in the same ballpark. So then you want to look at the prior year's W-2s. One, we have 5304 and 4 cents. 5304 and 4 cents. 2018, 5,004 and 48 cents. So we're in the 5,000 range just by eyeballing it. When we divide it out, 442 and 417, progressively getting better. Right now our year-to-date is at 537. What would you use to qualify? The 537. If you need just that many dollars to qualify, how's that risk on your file looking? Would you lend them your own money? You guys are like, I don't know. All right, any questions on calculating out that hourly income? Right, that's a whole other class. All right, let's take a peek at overtime. When you're looking at overtime, it's that variable income. It could be changing at different times of the year. You might have all your overtime at the end of the year, the beginning, who knows, right? So it's not always gonna look consistent on paper. So we wanna do a 2-year look back because we wanna see the stability of overtime as a whole. Okay, generally we want 2 years of overtime to qualify. But again, you could use that 12-month rule with compensating factors, or you can prove that it will be steady and ongoing, and you can actually use it as reliable income. In this case, shows the applicant has been there since 8/1/17. Is that a full 2 years? this point it is,
Yes.
right? Inventory control specialist, the probability of continuance is not required to be filled in, as are nothing over on this side, really. Obviously, if they're not military, that wouldn't be filled in, but this is not required to be filled in. We hope to have that information, it just helps us, but it's not required. So in this case, you have $18.79 an hour, and it gives us an average hours a week. How many is it? 46? Okay, 46 hours, thank you. Then we have our gross earnings. You're gonna have a through date. Well, let me start here. You'll have your prior years, 2017 and 18. Then you're going to have this through date. The through date here is 6/30. What's our dividing number? 6. I heard it said it's 6 because a full 6 months have passed. Now we can divide by 6. One thing to always remember is even if you have an annual salary up here, if it's an annual, whatever they're telling you, how many hours, or make sure you can calculate this, but you 100% want to come down here and do the base pay and do the calculation on the through date as well. A lot of times these are going to be different and not in a good way, okay? Because just because I'm making this much money, maybe I did take time off to have a baby, you don't know, and maybe it's not included in my base down here, so if you didn't calculate both and give me just the benefit of what I'm supposed to be making and didn't check my year to date, you'd be way off, okay? So in this case, let's look at the overtime. 17 was 11,274. Last year, 12,850. Currently, 16,511.
It's a lot more.
And we're only at the 6th month. So, your calculations as you would, and remember, we're just doing overtime. You don't have to calculate every which way of all incomes. I think the next time we do this class, I will bring music. And we'll jingle on it, take it off. All right, when you're ready, let me know. Give me the
We're ready.
nod. Okay. Just a few seconds. All right, so at this point, your year-to-date overtime when divided by 6 is 2752. Your recent year, last year, 1,071. 2017 was 2,255. What are you going to do to use, is overtime consistent? It's consistently earned, but not at the same level, right? So what is going to be your qualifying income? Where are you going to take this?
Yeah.
Last year, year-to-date.
Last
Yeah.
year and year-to-date. Is that what you're saying? You want to average those?
That's what they've been saying, yeah.
That's what you would do?
Well, that's what the underwriters have been telling.
Telling you to do?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, unless you could say why, I mean, you don't know, right now you have no history of receiving this amount, 2752, at the half-year point. So is it going to continue? Maybe it's gonna end up at $5,000, who knows at the end of the year. But you don't have a consistent earnings of that pattern, so you shouldn't use it to qualify.
Yeah.
You're giving them way too much.
24
Yeah.
months.
In the history sense. So what you would do is you would take last year, the prior year, and the current,
Yeah.
and then you can divide that by how many months? 18 months.
Yeah.
And then you can use that to qualify. Now, we still make it more towards the end of the year, and it's gonna be a little higher than it was last year if we just use that. But you can't just give them the benefit of the higher income. You have to average. Typically, when income is increasing, you average. If it's decreasing, what do?
Year-to-date.
Use the year-to-date. You never average declining income. That's the rule of thumb. Okay. Good talk. Good job, everybody. Now we have overtime and bonus. Of course, this overtime here, and we have bonus on this one. We have a twofer. In addition to looking at 514, 5/4 of 214, date they're employed, this one actually gives us a little more information saying the probability is good that they'll be here again next year. The overtime and bonus are likely to continue. They're working about 50 hours a week, okay? They tell us what their hourly rate is, 1923, so all that calculation aside, I want you guys to, let's look at on this one, let's do overtime, and then we'll do the bonus as well. So this one, the bonus is 87.19, 92.55 and 71 cents. And then we're right now at 11.25 and 79. So our through date is 9/30. How many months?
9.
Is that our dividing number? Okay. Why do you think maybe that this income for the overtime is at 11.25 right now? He's a delivery driver.
Isn't that Christmas?
Holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. A bulk of that income, as you're saying too, is gonna be at the end of the year more than likely. So, now that we have a why, what's your calculation?
Well, you just said if it's declining, you wouldn't use it,
You can average it.
but you could average it knowing that what you just said?
Yes.
17,
That's why I said the rule of thumb is you don't average declining income. But what would you do here? The probability you have on this case, you have the probability of continuance. It tells you that the overtime and bonus is likely. You know why, because it hasn't even been Christmas yet. But you have that history
So maybe.
of receiving that 700, so you know that more than likely it's going to happen again.
So all three and divide by 36? Would you?
That's
No.
taking it a little too far.
Okay.
Cause we're
Go
going 9
24
months.
months on this one.
24, we verify it's gonna continue. Sorry, I only have,
Okay.
we wouldn't go 24 plus 9. Oh, because it would equal out.
Because then you're gonna go.
I didn't mean 36, I meant 24 plus 9,
Yeah.
that's what I meant, yeah.
You wanted to, you wanted to do average all 3 years
Yeah.
essentially.
Yes, but you wouldn't do that.
But you would.
No.
No,
You
just
very
18 and
rarely
17.
are gonna go 2 years back in your averages. It's
Okay.
usually last year and whatever's current. Very, very rare would you do that. This is really just to show your stability.
Sure. On the bonus, would you, it's probably assuming the same thing, they get it at the end of the year, something like that.
Yeah, well, first, let me just say on
Oh,
this one,
sorry.
I just wanna wrap it up. So, Kurt, you're saying that they should take the 92.55, the 11.25 and divide by 24 months?
No, I would
No.
take the
17
previous
and
2 years
18
and just
divided by
divide by 24 and make a case that the overtime is going to be consistent, will be from the managers.
Because you have that additional act, so that's a way to do it. If you're going to go back the 2 years, like I said, you're looking for the stability, if you divide this by 9 months, you're not gonna get near the monthly that you
Sure,
want.
yeah.
So you're kinda hurting your case and hurting
Right.
your borrower. But because you have that stability in those last 2 years, like I said, it is rare that you're gonna do this, but in this case, you would wanna do that look back. Because you have the stability between the 2 years, and you definitely don't wanna take this 125 into account, it would just ruin everything, ruin it. I don't know how else to put it to you, but if you
Kill it.
take the 12 months, if you added these and divided, it's gonna make you have lesser than what you know he's probable to earn.
Plus it says they're likely to continue and
Exactly.
likely to get the bonus and likely to
Yes.
get the overtime.
So
and
because
all
that's
that.
actually filled out,
Mhm.
that just gives you a
Even more.
compensating factor, that's just more information to help your
Right.
borrower. 100%. Now, the bonus, as we were just saying, we've talked about it, maybe this is paid out at the end of every year, whatever it might be. 2,200, 2325, progressively getting better, by probably the percentage, whatever they're making in the company. So you have 183, 194, and 0. You don't wanna give him 0, you wanna give him credit for what he's earning. So this is another case, take the 24-month average. Other than this, going back to 2017, I can't think of another example where you would average in 2 years ago. It's generally last year and what's happening current. But if you don't have anything to show, you definitely don't wanna hurt your borrower in their
And if it-
qualifying figures.
If it was declining in 18, you would just divide that by 12 months?
Right,
So-
if my bonus was going down, I
Yeah.
wouldn't give them the benefit of the good bonus 2
Okay.
years ago. Thank you, great points. The A pops in after, that means analyze, I don't know how that works, so. All right, commission income. Commission income, 2-year earnings history, for the most part, is what we're looking for when we wanna do the commission. You can do less than 2 years if you have offsets, compensating factors, we've talked about those. Make sure you're documenting with your full VOE, because you wanna see how often are they paid commission, do they have a history of this commission? A lot of times, you'll get a W-2, it's commission and salary, isn't it? They lump everything together, so you have to get the breakdown with your full VOE. You can do pay stubs, 2 years W-2s, but this doesn't always fly. Remember the commission rule, if greater than 25%, make sure you're looking at, their 2106 and expenses and whatnot. We all know that went away, and that's no longer happening, right? So this year and going forward, we're actually taking their commission at face value and not hitting them with any expenses that they might have. So that's why you also need to look at that history as well. All right, here's another example, commission income. This is 2001. This is I'm sorry, I gotta lean up a little. Regional field rep, so someone who works in the field is Celia. 5,000 monthly. 6:30 is our date, our dividing number is 6, okay? We have a history of this, 26,341, jumped up to 39,375, and then this year, 6 months in, I'm at 8,971. This one's kind of painful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And even if I double what I've made so far, it's still not great.
So would you just take the year to date divided by 6?
In this case, that's what I would do. Great call. So prior years is very high. This year we have very likely it's gonna be low. It's that declining thing we were talking about. You wouldn't wanna average in and give them the benefit of this great year back here, when you know that even if they work hard and double that, even triple it, they're coming nowhere near the 39,000.
I'm assuming unless you could make the case that there's a reason at the end of the year they get a lot more or
$20,000
something.
bonus.
Well, that would be on a different line.
Right.
I don't think they could make a case that they could guarantee, because commission's not guaranteed.
True.
It fluctuates.
Right.
So as you only get as much as you earn, I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
It's a hard one, you can't pinpoint exactly how much you're going to get.
Okay.
And obviously in the prior years, decent year, really good year, not so good this year.
Right,
And we
right.
all know how the commission train rides. It ebbs and flows. So this one is the example of just divide that 1 year out. Great job, everybody.
It does make it difficult with commission people. I had a W-2 salesperson that did commercial AC units down in the Bay Area, and it was like last year when I did it, so I'm gonna make up the years. Like 15, he made 500,000 W-2. 16, he made 300,000. 17, he made 170. And then like 3 months into 18, he had made 300,000 already, just because he had sales, these commercial sales on the books, and they weren't paid, but they take a long time to get paid, because he gets a little bit up front and then gets all the rest of it when it's actually completed. And really hard deal that we had to take to impact with the alt doc program because of the declining W-2 income. Even though he was back on pace in a very short period in 2018, we had to go alt doc with it. So, because
how'd you calculate that one?
I did one of those landlord specials through impact, where as long as the PITI, as long as the gross rents exceed the PITI, you can get a loan. So, anyhow, commission income is fun.
Yeah, it's just very tricky. Just keep in mind, like, looking at these examples, look for that history, stability, make sure what you're using, you can actually quantify that they will have in their pocket. All right, we're going forward. Yeah, commission income, another example, real quick. We have the 9 of 2017, leasing agent makes $5,000 a month. The income looks consistent. Then we have commission income, 685, 14.4, and now 775. And our dividing number is again 630. Imagine. Okay, so we have a 6. Makes it easy. So what are we looking at here? 2017, they only worked 3 months out of that year, right? So that makes sense that that's a low number. Last year, 14,004, but right now we're only at 775 and it's half a year. What would you do? Here's how your calculations actually shake out.
Just year to date, probably.
Do we have 2 years in budget? What's that date,
9/29/17.
Yeah.
So we don't even have 2
Good
years
catch.
yet.
So can't use it at all?
Nope.
It's gonna be a hard case to make.
Can't even use the.
Commission
year to
should be,
date.
you can do, it should be 2 years history, And then you can't make a case for 12 months, but this is they don't really have a good case. If anything, you might be able to squeak out that 129.
Yeah.
Because they did have it last year, but they're not making near as much this year that we can tell. So you could probably make a case to use the 129. You should be looking for a 2-year history information.
Possibly, he was a leasing agent at a different company and ran with
Right.
bids and things of that nature.
Right,
Possibly.
if you went the year before here, where were they before they came here in 9? Maybe they were at ABC, as a leasing agent. Take that BOE and then see how that shapes up here. Maybe they made a 15,000 there too. But still, it's still not consistent with what the year-to-date is. We're in one of those situations unless we know for sure this leasing agent goes bananas between Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? Okay. All right, the 2-year employment history for primary income, that's something to address as well. Sometimes, as I was saying before, sometimes people are new to the workforce. They could just be getting out of school, getting out of some type of schooling, high school or otherwise. If they're returning after extended absences, take some time off to take care of family members or whatever that may be, or a recent employment gap. So what you're looking for on primary, is it non-variable, salaried, hourly? Is there a predetermined rate, predetermined hours worked? What are you actually going to look for when you have somebody that's coming back into that workforce? Remember what I was saying about look for that 2-year history? If they haven't been working, make sure you get to where they were before so you can actually see how their income is shaping up, okay? Where they're at now based on where they were when they took some time off. Let's see, we have 12/1 of 18, a quality control auditor, making $6,000 a month. 2018, $6,000. Makes sense, right? $6,000 a month, and then current is $18,000. If they took time off, bear with me. They had some time off, it would say if they worked at XYZ company, 0.33, but they've been in this line of work for 12 years. Even though they don't have the 2-year history for using the income per se, they actually were in this line of work prior. They took some time off, were there first, came back, and now they're making the same level of income that they used to make. 123 business, another lead control. This is their current, where they're getting paid the $6,000. This is what they made before, 2004 to 2015, making $6,500. This makes a good case to use that income, even though they don't have a 2-year history of working their regular job. They have been in this field, they have a high probability of making this amount of money. It looks stable based on what they've done in their past. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Get a letter of explanation typically. We get those letters of explanation to combat anything generally over 90 days these days. Used to be 60. So it's usually over 90 days, maybe even 120 depending on your guidelines. But you're trying to just justify why they were out of work, make sense of the whole thing. This one's 2017, a lawn care specialist. Been in work 7/1 of 2017, I'm sorry, the date of employment. And it talks about how much income they're making in 17, 24,000, 46,000, and now we're at 12. When we look at the application, Green Thumb Lawn Care, years on this job, 1.75. Prior, just in high school. Makes sense. 12 months history, at least, when they're just coming out of school, and then use that income to qualify. Pardon?
$46,000 to mow the lawns.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good. It'll kill you though in the heat. Now, sometimes if you have less than 2 years employment history, this is another one. It's a secondary employment, less than 2 years, but it ties into their primary. You have your police officers, sometimes they'll do work in the, fields, what is that?
Security?
At the ballpark? Yeah, security at the ballpark or something. It's related, the security is related to their primary. You can actually make a case for going less than 2 years on a second job, but you're looking really for that 12 months or more, okay? Oh, the word would have popped up for me if I just waited. Thank you, though. Okay, so remember, we want to, D is what? Anyone? Document. C, that's what we've been doing this whole time.
Calculate.
Calculate. And then what do we do with our A? We
Analyze.
analyzed. So remember, document, calculate, and analyze all these incomes, looking back at your guidelines. And hopefully today, that you got a little nugget out of this, a little refresher, and just going over the basics. Or had a little fun, you know, using calculators and such, where a lot of things these days are done for us automatically. Did you guys like that? Okay. Any questions or anything? Okay, I think we did pretty well. Yes?
Would,
Maybe has
would it
some-
be possible for you to come back to do a self-employment
Yes.
class?
I only live right down the road, so whenever you wanna put it together, let me know.
Because that's the one that I definitely would hate to love to learn.
Yeah.
I know.
Listen, I make
Just-
it a lot of fun, as you can only imagine.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It'd be great if you did
I will
one,
do it.
because, you know, sometimes I get